another movie review that was requested in honor of May the 4th of 2018, which is Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. And I got a request for me to review The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, which are episodes 7 and 8 respectively. So we're going to start this one off with The Force Awakens, and I'll put a link in the description to the review of The Last Jedi. And we're going to break this up into segments. We're going to start with the characters and talk about all the characters, and then we'll talk about the story, positives and negatives. And then I'll kind of just rank it where, in my personal opinion, where it lies with some of the other films in the franchise. So let's get started with The Force Awakens. We all know that it stars Daisy Ridley as Rey, John Boyega as Finn. You have Oscar Isaac as Poe. You have the great Harrison Ford as Han Solo. You have Adam Driver as Kylo Ren. You have Carrie Fisher as Leia. You have Andy Serkis playing Snoke. You have Donald Gleason playing Hux. So obviously just spilling all those out right there. You know it's a tremendous cast. They roll off the tongue very well because they're all, outside of a few like John Boyega and Daisy Ridley, the rest of that cast is pretty strong. You've seen them in other things. And even Gwendolyn Christie, who is Phasma, is in Game of Thrones, so we even seen her. So I think the casting of these films, going all the way back to A New Hope, have always been on point, top notch. Even with some of the people you don't know at the time, like at the time when A New Hope came out, Mark Hamill wasn't a household name. He is now. He is the ultimate badass Luke Skywalker, and at the time nobody knew who the hell he was. So they've always done a really good job of casting people who you may not know who they are initially, but through these characters you find out that they are very talented. So in other words, despite their popularity amongst people, the characters that are portrayed in these films are all gathered by these studios who pick extremely good actors to play these roles. So you really rarely have a bad performance. Now people say that about Hayden Christensen, which I'll defend him to the day I die. That was not his fault. That was just really horrible writing on their part. And I feel maybe I'll review those films, the prequel films, in the future, so I won't waste time there. But I think obviously acting wise, we went back to their original trilogy roots with The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, where there were some serious acting issues in the prequel trilogy, but that's to be expected. They were all directed by George Lucas, and he's not the best guy out there to direct talent. So, of course, the dialogue and the acting direction failed a little bit in that department, but we'll talk about that in the prequel trilogy, which I may review in the future. And get into some of these characters. We'll just go down each one. Let's start with Finn. Finn was the first person we saw in the marketing campaign when The Force Awakens was first announced, and they dropped that awesome teaser trailer, and people lost their minds because we got to see a stormtrooper. And not only did we get to see a stormtrooper, he had his helmet off, and not only did we see a stormtrooper with his helmet off, we saw a stormtrooper with his helmet off who was brown, who was a brown person, an African American, if that's what you want to call him. This is a galaxy far away, but he's a person of color, and a lot of people like that. A lot of people didn't. I thought Disney was making a statement right away with that not only are we going to attack these stories with our own flair, but we're going to also stay true to the diverse cast that the original trilogy had. And when people lost their minds about this, I think they tend to forget that there are other African Americans in some of these other movies. Obviously, Billy D. Williams was Lando Calrissian in the original trilogy, and then you have Samuel Jackson as Mace Windu in the prequel trilogy. So this is not the first time we've seen someone in this position, but I loved it. It really did set the tone for the movie, seeing him pop up. So you hoped that going into the film, after all the trailers were released and you got to see him using the lightsaber, we all thought, okay, he's a Jedi. There was a lot of misdirection in those trailers, which worked out fine for me. But Finn as a character really worked for me in The Force Awakens. I thought he was the ultimate reason why this story unfolded in The Force Awakens. Why a lot of these things, these events started to happen, it was because of Finn not wanting to be a part of the First Order anymore as a stormtrooper. Had enough when they were on Jakku, and he was ordered to shoot down the civilians there, and he chose not to do that. Now, a lot of people thought maybe he was force sensitive because Kylo gave him a really stern look at him, but I just felt like one of the things about Star Wars is all that mystery. You don't always know what all the characters are doing certain things at the time, and I thought having him be a stormtrooper with his helmet on and he's running around, you can clearly see that he's upset and doesn't want to do it. That was the first time we've seen a stormtrooper with a personality to that degree on screen. Now, we've seen it in the Clone Wars animated series and things like that, but live action, we hadn't seen anything like that. And we'll get into further how Finn fits into the story. And I felt like it was one of the best things about that movie, that it was so refreshing to see a character like that who was a former stormtrooper who was defecting to go fight alongside a group of people he literally did not want to be a part of either. He wanted to be alone. He ends up becoming a hero and fighting Kylo Ren. So that was quite an arc for him. But we'll talk more about that in a moment. Let's get through some more of these characters. But I mentioned Finn right off the top because he is the one who set all this in motion. The whole story set in motion the moment he decided to help Poe Dameron, and we'll talk about Poe here. Poe, as a lot of people know, and maybe you don't know, Poe was never originally supposed to make it past the TIE fighter diving down and being shot down, diving down onto Jakku's surface. He was supposed to die there. They went and decided, let's keep him in the story, so he just pops up later on when they're on Takodana at Maz's castle. He just pops up again in his X-Wing and starts going to town, and it was like, what? How the hell did he get off Jakku? So I liked him in this movie. He wasn't great. I don't think he was, when I first saw it, I didn't think he needed to be in the story any further than that. But now, having seen The Last Jedi, I'm glad they kept him. But I felt like that was a good death for him. If he had not been in the movie or any movies after that, I would have been fine with Poe Dameron's arc. I think it served its purpose at the time. Now, having seen him in The Last Jedi, that's a different story. I am so glad they decided to keep him because I love the way his story arcs into The Last Jedi. But obviously, we'll talk about that later. Let's get into Rey. Rey is one of my favorite new Star Wars characters in this trilogy so far. Finn is one of mine as well, but I am a Force user nut job. Anybody who uses the Force, they automatically will get just thrown to the top of the list of my favorite characters. My favorite character in the Star Wars in all the films is Darth Vader, and at a close second is Luke Skywalker and Kylo Ren. I cannot figure out which one of those two characters I like more. Episode 9 would tell me a lot more about where Kylo would fit over Luke Skywalker. I just have a little bit more, obviously, material with Luke Skywalker. He's been in more films, so as of now, I'll put Luke second, but Kylo is really starting to grow on me as a character. But Rey, let's just get this out of the way. She is not a Mary Sue. There's things that she did in this movie people had a huge problem with, that she can't do anything wrong. She can't do this. She can do this too quickly. The Force powers she used in this movie were not anything close to what you would consider her being perfect. She was learning things as she went on. There's a reason why the story is called The Force Awakens. Things are awakening in her. So let's just talk about her quickly as a character. I love Daisy Ridley. I can't picture anybody else playing Rey but her, and that says something about her. Now, obviously, yeah, someone could play this character. Anybody can play any character, but I just think she gets this character. And I think she embraces it, and I think she has a lot of fun playing this character. She understands the complexities of Rey. And she is a very complex character because this is one of the first times where, just like John Boyega, we have a woman, someone who is not been thrown straight into the story as the person in the movie who is the ultimate hero. And that's what we find out in this movie. Now, again, going into the movie with the marketing, you see Finn with the blue lightsaber. He's wielding it. You never see Rey in it. So everybody going into The Force Awakens was thinking Rey was a side character to Finn, and he was the main character. Now, Finn is the main character, one of the main characters, but I look at this film as Finn and Rey's story combined. This is their story, plus Han Solo, which we'll get into in a second. But ultimately, the true hero in this film is Rey. She's the last person you see in the movie hand a lightsaber to Luke Skywalker. So this was her story. And I think that is another refreshing thing. And people want to start throwing things out like social justice warrior and all that bullshit. I think that's stupid when it comes to stuff like Star Wars. It doesn't make. I mean, get the fuck out of here. It's a long, long, long time ago in a galaxy far, 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 far away. Has nothing to do with what we consider stuff here on Earth. So why bring a science fiction fantasy into your home and start putting your modern day Earth social justice warrior crap all over this film? I think that's stupid. Just watch the damn movie. This is not the first woman who was a hero. This is not the first African American that was a hero. And then the fact that they have a little bit of a love interest. Some people say that Finn loves her and she doesn't love him. Going into The Last Jedi, I'll talk about that a little more. But I think the interracial quality about them, whether they were in love or not, upset people. There was people just stomping their feet about it. These are two really good characters, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I love Rey in this movie. I love Finn in this movie. She's not a Mary Sue. And he is not someone who should just be thrust to the side as a side character, which was something that irritated me in The Last Jedi, but I'll talk about that in that review. Let's move on quickly with the rest of these characters. My favorite character, Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren is one of the most amazing things I think that they have done in these two films, The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, in regards to the dark side. These are not Sith. Him and Snoke are not Sith. So let's talk about Snoke as well, right along with this. Again, speculation going into the film was that Snoke was not a Force user. He may have been, but there's no indication in the movie. We only see him in a hologram. People didn't even know if he was 3 feet tall or 30 feet tall. There was reports that he was actually 30 feet tall. And come to find out he's tall, but obviously he's not that tall. I always said going into the film that I thought he would end up being a character that's not as important as people may think. And I remember at the time when I first saw it, I'm like, don't be shocked. And again, this is a spoiler review, and I'm going to say stuff in here that's a spoiler for The Last Jedi. So if you have not seen The Last Jedi or The Force Awakens, there's spoilers crossing both of them. So because I'm going to say it right now. I said it at the time when I saw The Force Awakens. I said, don't be shocked if Rey or Kylo doesn't kill Snoke very quickly and easily in Episode 8. Just keep that as a side nugget. We'll talk about that in The Last Jedi. And the reason why I got that sense is because whenever you introduce someone as a hologram and the person who's in the flesh, which is Kylo, and all the arc and the story is with him, you kind of render the person who's a hologram like Snoke a little bit irrelevant. Now, I will say this. I love Snoke as a character. We did not need to see his background. A lot of people were upset that we didn't get more of that in The Force Awakens. It's like, who is Snoke? We don't need to know that. Again, the mystery of Star Wars, to me, is the fun of it. The sci-fi, the fantasy aspect of it is the fun of it. So we don't need to know everything. All we need to know is that he's there. He's the supreme leader. We don't need to know how he got there. We're dealing with the facts in hand. The fact is, he is the supreme leader. He is evil. He has done things and is continuing to plan to do things that are obviously going to crush the Republic, and we're going to get into that in a minute with the big MacGuffin Starkiller base. I shouldn't say MacGuffin. We should say the returning orb of death that they keep bringing back in all these films, which I'll get to in a second when we get to negatives. That's a little tip. But I love the design of Kylo Ren. I love the mask. I love how his really just overwhelmingly, almost in a way, psychotic allegiance to Darth Vader, a man he's never met. Yes, it is his grandfather, but he's literally talking to Darth Vader's mask. It says something about his character. He is so screwed up, and people said he's like a whiny child. I just found out recently, this isn't like the Anakin Skywalker where he's literally like 18 years old in Episode 2, and he's 20, 21 in Revenge of the Sith. Kylo Ren is almost 10 years older, if not older, over 10 years older than Rey. And that was something that was just released after The Last Jedi. He's actually 30 years old. So he's not a whiny little kid. This guy is a grown man who has seen some shit. He's not a whiny, pouty little kid. He knows exactly what he's doing, which again, I even said at the time, a lot of people thought when he had his battle with Rey in the forest at the end and with Finn. Let's get something straight here with Kylo, and this is one of the things that bugs me. A lot of people. I remember coming out of the theater, and one of my best friends said, "Kylo Ren was kind of a pussy, wasn't he?" And my first thing I said to him was, "Did you watch the movie?" Because up until the point where he got shot with Chewie's bowcaster, which I'll get to in a second, he was taking out fools. I mean, he killed somebody in the first 3 minutes of his introduction. He was this guy is a freaking freight train. There are people shaking when he's walking around. And what irritates me about people with character development, they always want to see things just so cliched. He should be evil and that's it. What makes a good character is not that he's evil or just it, which is why I thought Snoke would be killed fairly quickly in The Last Jedi, because he didn't have any complexities to him, and it's always easier to get rid of a character who doesn't have a lot of complexities to him than it is to get rid of a character who does. In The Last Jedi, if Kylo Ren had died the way Snoke did, that would have been something you would leave you scratching your head, because you're like, why did you do that? It's the same reason why people get so pissed that Darth Maul is killed in Episode 1 so quickly. Why General Grievous was killed so quickly, because you have these complex characters, some of them that had the potential, but they were not drawn out in the prequel trilogy. It was one of my personal problems with the prequel trilogy, is that they brought in too many characters too fast, and it would have been nice to see Darth Maul go through that entire trilogy. With this, it's almost the same thing. This is where I'm getting at. Darth Maul and Snoke are two different types of characters. Snoke is not the centerpiece of it. He is something that is in Kylo's way, and he's presented that way. And so it didn't shock me when he was killed off. But I feel like people forget that how strong Chewie's bowcaster is. We're talking about Kylo Ren. He killed Han Solo, his own father, in cold blood, without even hesitating. He gets shot with Chewie's bowcaster, and it's clearly evident they were setting up how powerful that bowcaster was, because on several occasions Han Solo took it from him and was telling him how much he loved it. There's scenes on Takodana where he shot at 3 stormtroopers and they went flying in the air like beanbags. Kylo Ren took a direct blaster bolt right into his body, somehow kind of absorbed the bolt, because again, there were bodies flying everywhere on Takodana, and he gets shot and just falls to one knee. He's dying at this point. When he goes out into the forest to fight Finn and Rey, he is not 100%. He is literally dying. And Finn gets one lucky cheap shot on him and pays for it really clearly by getting his back just fucked up. And then Rey, she comes in, she's awakening from the Force, and she does something against him that is obviously not what he was expecting. He underestimated her and he paid the price for it. But again, he also was still hurt. He was damaged in the fight with Finn. He was not at 100% strength. So I'll give him a pass on that one. We'll see in future films, in Episode 9, we'll see if that lightsaber battle changes a little differently, because people do expect those two to have round 2 in Episode 9. Han Solo. I thought he was featured very well. Now, the original setup for these movies was Episode 7 was going to be Han Solo's time to shine from the original trilogy characters. Episode 8 was going to be Luke Skywalker, and Episode 9 was going to be Carrie Fisher's Leia. Unfortunately, she passed away, so we're going to have to see how that is going to play out, what they're going to actually do with her character in Episode 9. But Han Solo in Episode 7. It was great to see him back, and it was a great Han Solo in my opinion. I really enjoyed him as Han Solo. Some of my favorite scenes in the movie, he's in it. It felt like Star Wars. I think he was the perfect choice to put in the forefront for bringing these characters back and having us kind of have another fun adventure with Han Solo, because most of Han Solo's journeys and his adventures are fun. So I thought that was perfect to bring it back. I think the story would have been a lot different if The Last Jedi was the one that they brought it back with, and then Force Awakens. So tone-wise, I thought it was perfect for this particular film, and Harrison Ford just gets Han Solo, and I enjoyed the death, which sounds very perverse, but this is what Harrison Ford has been wanting since Empire Strikes Back. He always thought that Han Solo needed to die in a very heroic way, in a very tragic way, but in a way where it's going to motivate people to move on and get stronger and continue the journey at his sacrifice. And I thought they did that well by having his own son kill him. That is, I mean, it doesn't get worse than that. And because of the circumstances, I felt like his death was earned and was fair and was perfect for Han Solo in that regard. And he's obviously a beloved character. He's got his own solo, no pun intended, story coming out. So that's great. I loved him in that. His sidekick Chewie. I love Chewie in this movie. I thought Chewie was funny. What my favorite line in the movie is when they're on Starkiller Base and they're figuring out how to get in there, and Chewie says he's cold, of all people. He's cold. It's just a great character. He is used perfectly. He really makes it feel like the original trilogy sometimes when he's on in any scene that he's in, because when you start hearing his movement, and his footsteps, you can see him back there, and he's doing the way that he talks, his iconic sound when he's talking. That is Star Wars. So anytime he was in the scene with Han Solo in particular, when they first made their appearance in the Millennium Falcon, I just want to shit my pants every time I see that scene. It's just a great scene. It's classic Star Wars. It brings you back home. So let's get on to a couple more characters, some quick ones here. General Hux, liked him in this movie. I really liked Gleason. He is an unbelievable actor. He's perfect for this one. And people said he was over the top in his scene right when they're on Starkiller Base and they're about to blow up the Republic. He does a really good job in that scene of with his speech. I know some people think it's over the top. It is over the top. I think it fits in this one pretty well. He's an over the top character, and especially if you read any of the material like Phasma, the book on that. I mean, he is one fucked up guy. I mean, this guy, you want to talk about evil? He's about as close to being. I mean, if he's not evil yet, he is extremely close. Hux is a piece of shit, but he's a great character. I love that character. Phasma, in the marketing, she was great, and I didn't have a problem with it until I read the book Phasma. And now every time I see her on screen, I just want to. It's very disappointing. I wish they would do Phasma right in these films. I was fine with it in The Force Awakens. I loved in The Force Awakens, but we thought she would do more, and she definitely didn't do anything in The Last Jedi. Hopefully, especially if you read the book, you understand just how powerful she is, and maybe she'll be back in Episode 9. But we'll see. I mean, because of right now, she is the Boba Fett of Star Wars, this new trilogy. And Maz Kanata, she's another one that I love. I would love to know that backstory, how she got Luke Skywalker's lightsaber when his arm got severed by Darth Vader in Empire Strikes Back. That lightsaber, by the way, I'm going to talk about that as a character. That lightsaber is my favorite lightsaber out of all the lightsabers that have been in these movies. That is my favorite lightsaber. I loved that thing even when I was a kid. And it was good to see it back in the prequel trilogy when he was fighting, when Anakin was fighting Obi-Wan, and you see him pick it up, yep, that's the lightsaber he's going to handle Luke. And to see it come back again in this one, it was amazing when I went in that theater and walked out of that theater from seeing The Force Awakens the first time and realizing after Rey hands over the lightsaber to Luke Skywalker that was the same lightsaber he was fighting his father with, and that here it is back in his face again. So let's get to Luke Skywalker. He is in exile, self-exile on Ahch-To, and we only see him for literally a minute in this movie, and a lot of people were disappointed. I was happy. I didn't want to see him. I felt like after seeing Harrison Ford go, I didn't want him to say a word, and when the movie ended without him saying a word on that mountaintop, on that cliff, I was so happy, and a lot of people were pissed off about it. I was actually happy about it. I thought that was a great ending, and it ended on the cliffhanger. And because the reason why I wasn't happy, I was happy about it, is because it sucks at that moment you couldn't get it, but I was thinking in the future. I'm like, well, how cool is that going to be when it ends in that cliffhanger, and then you go into the next one, especially when they announced that this going into The Last Jedi, that there would be no time jump. The first one in the saga, the live action films, that there would be no time jump between episodes, that it would pick up right when that one left off. I'm like, that's awesome. Going in the future, you watch these two movies back to back, they're going to be perfect companion pieces, and having watched them back to back, they obviously there's some things in The Last Jedi tone wise that don't fit, so if you watch them straight through, there is a significant tone shift for something that happens immediately after the first film. But for the most part, I like Luke Skywalker. Again, he's my second favorite Star Wars character, so I had no problem with that. Get into some of the positives in this movie to end this review. Obviously, some of the positives in this movie is that Star Wars is back. It marks the beginning of a 3-part original trilogy, sequel trilogy is what a lot of people call it, and it started off with a very good concept of having things we haven't seen before, like a black stormtrooper who is defected. We have a lead female Jedi character. We have old characters from the original trilogy like Han Solo, Leia, and Luke Skywalker to kind of pass the torch to this new cast. And you also have things that are similar to some of the original trilogy. You have all the classic Star Wars stuff, lightsabers, Star Destroyers. You have the classic Millennium Falcon, my favorite ship of all time. And you have a story that really, really works and contains itself well inside of the Star Wars universe. And again, I love the story. I love the characters. The action is great. The music is great. John Williams always does a great job. The only negative I have about this movie is this: it is basically a remake of A New Hope, almost tit for tat. It is. Now, obviously, it's a lot different, but the core story of it is basically the same. You have a group of people who are coming together to blow up a giant orb Death Star. That's basically what the story is. You have things in the story that don't make a lot of sense. Like you have like people like Rey and Finn who have no idea that Jedis exist before. I find that hard to fucking believe. That irritates me a little bit. I don't know why they keep doing that in the Star Wars universe. I mean, the Jedi have been around for thousands of years, and I don't give a damn how remote your planet is. Technology is good enough where you know that Jedi existed, but they still do that same thing. Because I thought that was silly in A New Hope when Han Solo didn't believe that Jedi existed. What the hell are you talking about? You lived on Corellia. You mean to tell me you didn't know fucking Jedi existed? Get the hell out of here. But so outside of that, I wish they had done something. I like Starkiller Base, but the whole concept of it, I think they should have went in a little bit different direction than that, because it's just enough with the Death Star shit. We've seen it 3 times now. So, and literally, it's like 3 out of 4 films in this franchise is dealing with giant orbs that can blow up planets. Let's expand the universe a little bit. So that's a big negative. But for the most part, even though it is a reboot type of a deal, I understood why they did it. They took all the great things from the original trilogy, and I think threw all of it into this thing. I don't think it's just a remake or reboot from A New Hope. I think I see things in Force Awakens from Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi as well. I think they took that whole trilogy and just threw all the good stuff about that movie in the Force Awakens. I mean, in fact, you got the 3 iconic places from the original trilogy. You have Jakku, which is basically Tatooine. Hoth, you have Starkiller Base, Snow, and you have Takodana, which is basically Maz Kanata's planet, which looks a lot like Endor. So you have like literally all 3 of those major planets in that original trilogy. All those environments are featured in this film, in one film. So I just think it was a nod to all of them. I think J.J. Abrams did a very good job in that. And I'll talk about him real quick with it. I think he was the perfect director for this. What he did with the original Star Trek, when they announced that he was going to do the first Star Wars film, I'm like, that's a perfect choice, because what he did with Star Trek I thought was amazing. Star Trek is his Star Trek. The way he tipped the hat to the original series, but also did his own thing with these characters and made you care about it. And he did the same. He brought back Leonard Nimoy, somebody who you can identify with, that passed the torch to this cast of characters. It's good to see some of the people who did it before. If they're on board and they're saying, "Hey, look, I'm cool with this," then we have to be as an audience. And I love that about this movie and about this franchise. And about J.J. Abrams, he just gets these franchises. And I completely love that about this movie. All in all, ranking wise, it's a really good movie. I still have a few in front of it, but it's not nearly worse. I'll put it all over all the prequel films, and I'll put it over Rogue One and things like that. So it's probably my top 5. I'll have to do a complete ranking sometime. I'm still waiting to see Han Solo, and then maybe I'll do a ranking video. Once Solo, a Star Wars story, comes out, I'll finally do a complete ranking video of my favorite Star Wars films and why they rank that way. But The Force Awakens is an amazing film. It's one of the funnest films they've made in the Star Wars saga. It's one of the most beautiful. The sound design is great. It's a fun time. It's hard to find negatives in the movie. If you do, you are kind of nitpicking, or you've been somebody who's sitting over back with their feet kicked up, calling people social justice warriors over some of the things that happen in the film. Too bad. This is the way films are going to be in the future. Diversity is here, so suck it up and shut the hell up and go hump your cousin or something. But don't talk about the things in this film as being negatives. It's great to see a good female lead. It's good to see minorities, and I'll repeat that in the Last Jedi, but I think they take it even a step further. But that's my review for The Force Awakens. And again, I'll put a link in the description to The Last Jedi. I'll see you guys on the next movie night. Take care.